So today I want to talk to you about anger, and the reason that I want to talk to you about anger is not just because Jesus talks about it, but because our society today is experiencing a pandemic, an epidemic of anger. From the very top levels of our nation's government to the households of San Antonio, where there's been a 30% increase in domestic violence over the last year. Anger is out of control in our country. And anger, frankly, is out of control in some of us, if we're honest, right? Anger is visible from the caliber of public discourse to which we have fallen, to the road rage that people are expressing to other drivers who they do not even know, to the levels of gun violence because people are angry at themselves and choose to end their lives with a gun, or because they are angry with another ethnic group or religious community and decide to end their lives with a gun. Anger is rampant in our country and in the world right now. So I want to take a moment today to talk about anger as frankly as I know how. I've had my own issues with anger. I experienced when I was in my 20s a moment of anger that was so powerful that it left me literally paralyzed on the ground and shaking because I couldn't decide whether to stuff it further down inside of me and attempt to forget about it, or to let it out in fear that I was going to destroy the home that I lived in. I know what anger is like. Jesus links together for us murder, anger, insult, and disparaging comments, and essentially says to us, it's all the same thing. And that, at first glance, may feel very unfair. You know, for me to turn to somebody and go, you idiot, is not the same as shooting somebody with a gun. And yet Jesus, in his effort to lead us to the root of things so that we can be changed, says, well, actually, there is a common root here. And I believe the common root in all of these behaviors that are destructive is our willingness to diminish the full humanity of another person. I can't destroy your life unless I decide your life is worth less than mine. I can't call you an idiot or stupid unless I believe you are less than I am. I cannot engage in an angry outrage that has the potential to destroy our relationship unless I have come to believe that this relationship with you is not worth it. And so I want to spend some time today talking about how we can move ourselves beyond the ways in which we have chosen to use anger to perhaps some more productive ways in which we can engage an emotion that we cannot make disappear. Because anger can't be eradicated. It needs to be managed. It needs to be dealt with. We need to understand some strategies for how to handle it. Psychologists have been studying anger, and one of the studies that I looked at was very interesting. It's looking now that they can look at the biology of anger in our brains. One of the things that they've discovered is that when anger arises in us, it does two things. There's kind of one internal signal that anger gives us, which many of us are familiar with as the fight or flight response. The increased heart rate, the tension inside, the contraction, and that energetic kind of boost that happens when we have anger arise within us. And that is an internal signal to us that we are about to engage, or we need to engage in some kind of threatening experience. Some threat has presented itself. And our body responds to that threat to give us either the energy to fight or the energy to run so that we can escape it. That's the internal biological piece. There's also an externalization that happens almost unconsciously for us in the way we scrunch up our face or the look in our eyes. There is something that happens. I remember a kid that I taught, a 4-year-old, when Lodi and I taught 4-year-olds for First Presbyterian Church. His name was Stuart. And Stuart and his mom had an angry encounter every night when it was time to get out of the bath. He didn't want to get out of the bathtub. And he told us one time, she asked our help, and I was trying to talk with Stuart about it. He says, well, I know I really don't have to get out of the bathtub until my mom's eyes are really big and this vein is popping out on the side of her neck. Then I know it's time to get out because she's about to do something about it. All right? So that external sign, that visible sign, is one that clearly is intended to communicate to whoever the other party is that we're not on the same page. I feel very differently about this than you do. And my face and the way I'm holding my body and the way I'm breathing, all of these external things, they're to indicate to you that something's going down here because we don't see eye to eye. So we have this internal and this external signaling that goes on. But psychologists say the upper levels of the brain have to make a decision about what you do with those signals. And that's what I want to talk to us about. Is that upper level decision making that needs to be engaged before we act on our anger. Because if we refuse to go to the upper levels of our brain, if we only operate out of our animal brain, we are in trouble. And I think that's what we see today. Now, the fact that people make decisions about what to do with anger differently should be fairly obvious to us. Just listen to some of these ways in which people engage their anger. Some people, like me, took their anger and stuffed it so far down that you pretend it doesn't exist. Until what? The volcano erupts. Because the pressure is too great. And whoever happens to be the one that dropped that last straw into the bucket, look out. Because you're going to get it all. Even though it doesn't belong to you, you're going to get it all. Some of us repress our anger. Some of us, the moment we get angry, it's like, blah! You get it. Everybody gets it. Whoever is in the room gets it. Because as soon as they feel it, it's out. And it's indiscriminate. It just kind of goes everywhere. I'm sure some of you've met or live with people who do that. Some people deny anger. They deny it so hard they can't even acknowledge that they feel anger at all. And often they deny it by running away from it, by saying so distracted, or by becoming addicted to one thing or another, that anger is utterly oblivious to them because they deny it even exists. Some folks take their anger and actually enjoy it. They enjoy the power surge that comes from it. And they enjoy using that power to dominate other people. Some people convert every emotion that they have that is in the negative sphere into anger, because it is the most comfortable and familiar. So when they are sad, they get angry. When they feel betrayed, they get angry. When they feel lonely, they get angry. When they feel hungry, they get angry. Because anger is the comfortable emotion to express. Just that alone should help us understand that what we do with anger has an element of choice in it. We can choose what we're going to do with it, or what we're not going to do with it. Now, I don't want you to leave here thinking that anger is a bad thing in and of itself, because I do not believe that. And I don't believe that's what Jesus was driving at in this passage. Jesus himself got plenty angry. Just think about the day when he walked into the temple and turned everything upside down. So it is not that anger is in and of itself bad. It is an energetic, emotional reaction. And I'd like to put forward that most of the time, perhaps not all the time, but most of the time, anger arises out of a perceived injustice. A perceived injustice. It may or may not be an intended injustice. It may be somebody did something out of ignorance, like cut you off on the highway. But you perceive it to be unfair and incorrect, right? Unjust. My son Owen thought it was unjust for me to expect him to keep his room as clean as I wanted to keep my room. A person who is not being given the same pay as someone else because they are of a different gender perceives that to be unjust and is angry about it, right? Sometimes the injustices are verifiably unjust, on the record, on the face. But sometimes it's just our perception of injustice that causes anger to rise up within us. When that happens, what are we going to do with it? If the injustice is actually something that needs to be rectified, then we need to learn how to engage the people on the other side of that question in ways that can help move a solution forward to create a more just situation. Like Owen and I did with the door closing. What a concept. You keep your mess inside your door, I'll agree not to be mad about it. It made such a huge difference in our relationship. It wasn't a daily place of conflict that was threatening to destroy the fabric of our love and our support for each other. Over the stupid laundry on the floor, right? So I want to talk a little bit about what a healthy way of handling our anger could be. Because I think healthy anger is anger that, first of all, is acknowledged, not denied, not run away from, but acknowledged. And secondly, felt. You have to allow yourself to feel it because it is in your body in very real ways. But then used, or the energy from that anger is used in ways to resolve the perceived injustice and not to destroy or demean or diminish the humanity of somebody else. That's the pathway I'd like to hold out for you today. Because I think it's the pathway that Jesus is holding out for us. I don't believe that anger in Jesus' concept is something that is on its face wrong, because, as I said, Jesus used it himself. And if you think about it, anger is exactly what is underneath the motivation of a Cesar Chavez, or a Martin Luther King Jr., or a Rosa Parks, or a Mahatma Gandhi. It is their anger over the injustices that were being suffered by people in their communities that led them to take action, but it was not action to destroy or to demean. It was quite the opposite. It was the action that sought to confer equal dignity to all parties involved so that there could be a lifting and not a diminishing of all humanity in the process. Far too often we acquiesce to less higher brain forms of putting our anger into motion. And in doing so, we choose destructive paths that rip apart our relationships instead of seeking to reconcile. At Triennium this week, 6,000 screaming young people are a sight to behold. But 6,000 screaming young people declaring that racism will not continue in their watch is a powerfully moving thing to behold. Our Presbyterian Church is about 10% non-white nationally. This event was 25 to 30% non-white. That's a huge difference. That's 2.5 to 3 times the number of brown, yellow, red, and black people in that crowd. And those kids, anytime any preacher said a word about eradicating racism, the place exploded. These kids are fed up with our inability to figure out how to get beyond the racism that has divided this country for centuries. And it is hopeful to me to see them so devoted to that cause. Jesus, in the second half of the passage that we have, brings out a couple of scenarios where he says, instead of being hostile toward one another, seek reconciliation. If you come to worship and you want to show your love for a God who you cannot see with your eyes, as John says, but you cannot reconcile with the brother who stands beside you, better to leave your offering there and get it right with the person who you can see before you attempt to make it right with God. Because loving God and loving neighbor in Jesus' mind are so completely and utterly one with each other that you cannot do one without doing the other. You dishonor one if you dishonor the other. He says, if you're going to court, if somebody's so mad at you, they've decided to sue you, it is better for you to reconcile out of court. Find some common ground. Find a place you can stand on together. Come to some kind of agreement, because you have no idea what that judge is going to do. They may throw your butt in jail. And then you don't know when you're going to get out. Your relationship is more important. Find a way to be reconciled, if you possibly can. Jesus holds before us the challenge of not allowing our anger to rip us to shreds. To recognize that the root of that hostile action against another, whether it be calling them a fool or an idiot, or demonstrating your anger toward them in ways that demean them, or killing them with a gun, all of them hold the same root. It's a willingness to say, you are less than me. You are less than I am. And because of that, I can treat you this way. That, friends, is simply a lie. And until we grasp that truth, we are going to struggle with dealing with our anger in legitimate and helpful ways. But if we can learn to acknowledge it, to feel it, to probe beneath it, to identify the injustice we feel, and to invite the person with whom we are angry to answer the question themselves, what is the injustice you feel here? Perhaps then we can begin to build the bridges that will join us back together and knit the fabric of our society in ways that enable us to support each other and not destroy each other. Jesus said in the Beatitudes, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." It is truly when we are able to see God in each other that we then can rise above the animal instincts to destroy and use our better brains to find a place of compromise. That is my hope. That is my prayer for my life, for your life, and for our life together. Let us pray. God, you alone know the individual struggles we have with the anger that we feel. You alone know the ways in which we have already injured far too many, with the ways in which we have directed our anger. And you also know the places from which we have run when an injustice needed to be confronted, with the power of our anger but without its destruction. Give us the grace, we pray, to learn to use this gift of anger, not to destroy, not to demean or diminish, but to transform and to heal the injustices that are real. For through Christ our Lord we pray this prayer. Amen.
sung that just right now. I was like, wow, that's exactly what the sermon was about. Like, find the high ground. Don't let yourself be stuck down there where you're grounding people. So, higher ground. Leo, there's another kind of